You can't hate yourself into self-love. Ladies, it is time to get rid of self-criticism in our life. If you're new here, my name is Vallotton, and I love a good, honest, real conversation about life, relationships, and womanhood. So today, I am excited to have a conversation on the topic of truly learning to love ourselves and getting rid of self-hatred. See, I know this topic isn't actually very flowery or lighthearted, you could say, but unfortunately, this is a topic that hits really close to home for me. I spent years feeling confused and exhausted by the battle that I felt in my mind and the thoughts that I had towards myself and the way that I approached life. See, it can become really comfortable and common to fight the fight in our mind. It can almost become normal where we grow comfortable with these awful thoughts that we have towards ourselves. See, but I find it really interesting that we often personify this idea of self-criticism. We often call it the inner critic. And I want to propose that we actually need to grow a little bit more curious about this inner critic. See, I believe it's powerful and that you should align your thoughts with the truth of God, that you should focus on things that are lovely and pure, and that you should declare these things over yourself in your life. But sometimes you could do all of that. You could try, fight, strive, and show up every day feeling tired with the thought of having to do that again. You could feel like I spent my whole day trying to push that thought away and trying to align my thoughts with the truth of God. And that battlefield that we feel in our mind can almost become discouraging. See, that inner critic in our mind, it often likes to motivate us with some really interesting tactics. Things like punishment, fear, hatred, worry. I mean, the list goes on. Lots of things that the enemy likes to encourage us and motivate us by. Self-love motivates us with things like love and joy and peace and kindness and patience. Beautiful things that are gifts and fruits of the Holy Spirit in our life. So what happens when the inner critic in our mind is more dominant than the voice of love and kindness and goodness in our mind? I believe that the enemy did come to steal, kill, and destroy. And if he can get us to a spot in our mind to believe certain things, if he can isolate that away from everybody else, he gets us exactly where he wants us to be. But if we begin to react and actually make choices in our life because of what that voice, because of what that inner critic is telling us we need to do and motivating us with, we begin to sow steps into our future that are filled with hatred and punishment and fear. We know that we reap what we sow. So you might achieve that dream version of yourself, right? You might have this goal to be more extroverted and to show up in a space where you actually feel heard. And it's motivated with this fear that if you don't do that, maybe people won't accept you. So you show up and you are loud and you're trying to share stories and it's fun, but you leave and you actually feel because you weren't true to yourself. You actually enjoy listening and observing and participating, but not being the center of attention and the life of the party. But that motivator was telling you, if you don't do this, I don't know what's gonna happen. Or maybe it's that you have this version physically of yourself that you want to achieve. You want to lose some weight and grow a little bit stronger. So you find yourself sitting down and that inner critic comes in and it starts telling you better get up or you're gonna get fat today. So you buckle up and you get yourself to the gym, and truth be told, I mean, it's science. You could get yourself to that dream weight, but I bet you get there and it's not actually what you hope for. And you're not actually fulfilled because the motivator has been fear. and anxiety. And you're gonna actually get to that spot and worry that what happens if I don't keep doing this? And what happens if I don't listen to that motivating voice? And what's gonna happen? Because it's all been rooted in fear. See, I want to propose that if we grow a little bit more curious about this inner critic, we might actually have a better strategy for finding victory over it and actually experiencing true self-love and acceptance in our life. Think about this example for a moment. There's this thought in psychology that is sort of applauded to Freud and is used in somewhat medical models. When somebody is engaging with a patient, they use this frame of thought called systems thinking. Systems thinking approaches a patient or person with the idea that they're not a unilateral being. There's a lot more that goes on beyond one layer. A person is dynamic, they have dynamic relationships and life experiences and culture that makes up who the person is. So if you approach the person with a framework that they are black and white, unilateral, you are going to actually miss a whole facet of who this person is. And all these facets of them actually exist together, creating their being, creating their internal world. Here's an example. Consider the young teenage girl who finds herself pregnant. And there's all these preconceived ideas and judgments that the world might have about her. They might think, oh gosh, she just wasn't careful, or she didn't know. And you just make these assumptions about what she did and how she got herself into this situation. But systems thinking would approach that idea with a more broad and dynamic approach. They would begin to grow curious about who she was and the facets of her life. What's her relationship like at home? What are her past experiences? What's her cultural beliefs and dynamics? What maybe was the motivator to getting to this spot? Or how did this actually unfold for her? I think that often we sort of approach the enemy with a unilateral approach. We think we got him figured out. He just has a bad intention and that's it, right? So we have to declare truth and we have to focus on things that are lovely and pure in our minds until it just goes away. But think about armies or, when nations go to war, they don't go to the battlefield flippantly. They don't just do what everyone else has done, because every battlefield is unique. It's not copy and paste. It's not black and white. And neither are we as human beings. Our minds are not black and white. Our experiences are not unilateral. Who we are is not static and stagnant. We have to approach our mind and the battlefield of our mind with curiosity, with that systems thinking approach, because we can't copy and paste like everyone else has done. See, now I'm not saying that there aren't spiritual and biblical truths. There absolutely are. But sometimes I think we disregard the fact that there's a real live enemy in the world, and he's wise. See, he knows our weaknesses, and he's aware of the areas that we fall short. And so sometimes we actually don't show up with a strong tactic and strategy. We don't show up prepared for the battlefield because we're just copying and pasting. We're just doing what we've seen other people do. And we need to grow a little bit more curious about the inner critic in our own personal world. I spent years feeling in this constant tension inside of me. I didn't really know where it all originated from, and I just constantly felt like I was battling the thoughts of the enemy in my mind, or these awful thoughts that I had about myself. And so I would try to think about the things that were lovely and pure, and I declared truths about myself. But actually, when I began to ask questions about where this inner critic was sort of originating from and what its purpose was in my life, I realized I needed to actually have a different strategy. This feeling and this tension was familiar to me. And it often looked something like this. I would lie on the couch on a Sunday afternoon and this voice would come into my head and it would say, you better get up. You lazy little, you better get up. You are just going to waste your life away. Nothing good is going to come of it. You better get up right now and be productive. And so I would muster up the strength and I'd put on my running shoes and I would go for a run and try to, pump myself up and motivate myself to get stuff done. And it was constant. It was just all the time. I just battled that. Like I could never settle down and rest. And ultimately, I actually came to this really crashing point in my life where my whole body was really shutting down. I was experiencing stress in ways that was affecting my physical body because I wasn't ever allowing myself to completely find peace and rest. And eventually, I got to this spot where I realized I need to recalibrate. There's something that is just not totally right here. And I was talking to a mentor one day and she just asked me a really simple question. She said, Allie, what do you believe about pain? And I said, well, I don't know. Like, I don't really want to feel it. Like, I think it's going to just like swallow me up alive if I do. And I realized that this inner critic inside of me wasn't necessarily all bad. Yes, the motivator was bad, but it itself, this inner critic inside of me, was scared that the part of me that wanted to lay down and rest would be swallowed up alive by the pain in becoming aware and not busied and distracted by the other things in my life, and would not ever get up from the couch. I thought if I stopped, stopped running 1,000,000 miles an hour and came to a halt, I would become so aware of things that I would be swallowed up by them and never be able to move again. I realized the inner critic itself had fear. And when your own fear is motivated by fear, you just begin creating a world around you that's filled with fear. And I actually had to realize I need to find compassion for the part of me that is so scared to sit still. And I grew in compassion for the part of me that felt terrified, that was the motivator to the inner critic. And I began to realize that when I laid down to take a rest in moments, that inner critic lost a bit of power that day because I realized I needed to approach with a different tactic than trying to just shoo it away. I needed to show myself you can trust that no matter what, you're going to be okay. That the Prince of Peace lives inside of you. And so if you find yourself in a swirl of pain, there's going to be peace available to you. And his joy is your strength. And I began to speak to that part of me that was so scared of what might happen if I stopped. And I began to speak the truth that it specifically needed to hear based on its specific fear. Not on these general statements, not flippantly throwing things just because that's what I've seen other people do. I grew strategic in my approach so that I could actually be effective in ridding self-criticism in my life and growing in love and compassion towards myself. Because I have found that when I've taken the steps out of love, I've been able to create a world around me that's filled with that. But when I've taken steps out of fear, ultimately, that's what my future holds. Love often looks like leaning in and growing curious, trying to seek to understand so that you can actually become extremely effective. And I would encourage you, take the first step and ask yourself, okay, what's the part of me that speaks to me that way? What is its motivator? Why does it do that? Is it scared of something? Is it a past experience that's initiated these sorts of thoughts and feelings? Grow curious, because you'll be able to find a plan that is more effective than just trying to ignore it or trying to muster up all your own strength and just love yourself. Just do the things that feel like self-love. We talk about self-love all the time. It's like, take a bubble bath and make your favorite tea, and all those things make you feel good for a second. But if you don't get to the root of the problem, you won't actually experience self-love. So ladies, thank you for watching today's video. I hope it was a blessing to you. And if it was, would you just give this video a little like? Would you let me know in the comments below? And like always, ladies, have a beautiful rest of your week. I will see you all next time.